Okay, welcome to the Chris Hall NDIS podcast. It's Chris Hall here, your host, and today I've got Pat Donley with me. Now, Pat and I have known each other for a few years. He's the senior partnership manager at Aircall, which is a VoIP phone company. And what that means basically is doing all of your phone stuff, but on the cloud, right? Whether it be from your computer or from an app on your phone, etc. But it's more than that; it integrates into other systems that can be very powerful. And today we're going to unpack how phone solutions can be used for NDIS providers to enhance their operations, get to better outcomes for their clients, and bring efficiencies to the business. So, Pat, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I've
the
been
invite.
I've been, been looking forward to picking your brains a bit because I know it's such a changing space in terms of the rapid development of AI and various things. So yeah, keen to get into it today.
Yep, lots happening.
So all right. So look, we for transparency, we use Aircall in our own business at Steadway, as you know. And one of the game changing things for me is that I've implemented we call it the operations line, and it's just a mobile number that's in Aircall. But the power of it is that I can assign that one number to myself, to my general manager, to my team leader, and it means as a company that we can hand on heart say we staff that phone number from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., 7 days a week. And it's an amazing impact in terms of customer service and also the operational viability of things. So, that's just to kind of like fast forward the audience into understanding, how things like that can work. I mean, tell us a bit more from your perspective. Like if you're working with an NDIS provider, let's say you've got multiple locations, how can a VoIP solution in general streamline communication between teams and participants that they work with?
Yeah, fantastic. I think what you're describing there is one of the real core original benefits of VoIP technology, sort of dating back even before Aircall started out. So I think the real beauty of VoIP is, as opposed to working on that sort of legacy cloud, or sorry, that legacy PBX system with your classic handsets, the beauty of VoIP is that it's quick and it operates through the internet. And what that allows you ultimately to do is put flexibility into your business and have complete ownership over your phone numbers and your users no matter where they are. So yeah, in your particular example with your business, of course, I imagine that not everybody works with you on site. You've got your team probably nicely spread out. What Aircall is going to allow you to do is basically spin up as many numbers as you want and have as many users as you need to the platform. And you can have those users and those numbers overlap, mix and match as you see fit. And you can customize everyone's hours and settings according to them. So
Okay, and even, let's take that apart. Even the concept of the user. So, like again, for people that aren't used to this, you go, "What do you mean? I've got my Telstra mobile." And so people are used to the classic physical handset, and it's a 04 number that only they've got access to. Maybe the best that they could do is put it to voicemail or forward it to another number. But I suppose the point here is that you are free from the constraint of a physical handset, aren't you? And you can allocate multiple users, i.e., humans, to that one physical number.
yep, 100%. That's basically how it works. So I think for VoIP, the big thing is, yeah, you're not using a physical handset and you don't need an actual mobile device. Like you've got like a work phone. I know a lot of companies still will issue out work devices and they'll go pay for an entire, iPhone just so
Mm.
one person can make a few phone calls. Instead, with VoIP and with Aircall, you restrict the burden of the cost of an actual device, and instead you work through what we would call the soft phone interface on your computer or through the application interface on your personal phone.
Well, exactly. So I suppose actually that's a structural difference. There's no need to worry about hardware basically because it works. I use this, on my laptop, and I've noticed that. I mean, yes, the best practice is to have a microphone, and I do. I use a microphone and I put it in my laptop, and it is better with that. But also, my colleagues have quite happily just spoken into the laptop, and it works quite beautifully. And we've validated it that it feels pretty similar, and then you've got it on the phone as well. And so basically, what that means again for the audience here is that I can have my personal mobile number that still goes ring ring for my personal calls, but if it's a business call, it's literally like a FaceTime. It's Aircall coming up and going, oh, that's a work call. So it's just an app that sits on my personal physical device, which we all have nowadays.
Yeah, bang on. I think the real upside of that, using the Aircall application like that way in the mobile phone, there's two main advantages to it. The first one is if you're, let's say the provider owner, or you own the business.
Yep.
The good thing for you is that you obviously, again, you don't have to pay for the devices and you can issue out those phone numbers to your relevant team members. The
Mm.
good side of that is then obviously if you own the phone numbers for your business, it means that you own all of the call data. And that if your employees, hopefully not, but if they do leave at some point, you as a business still own the data, which is great.
Yeah.
For the employee side, though, the real upside, in my personal opinion, on what the benefit of using AirCall is for me is I've got my personal mobile phone here, right? I call my mom, I call my grandmother, do whatever. I'm on Facebook. I can still receive air call phone calls through the application. So when I'm receiving a personal call, it'll say, mum's calling. That's
Yep.
great. When I'm receiving a work call, it will say, hey, Chris Hall's calling from wherever, it's coming through air call, right? And then I can take that phone call and I can decipher between my work calls and my personal calls. And when that work call is happening, obviously, the great thing is obviously that the phone call is being recorded through air call. We'll go push it back to whatever system we need to. But the other upside of that is, as an employee of, let's say, your company, maybe
Mhm.
I can set my own working hours. So I can
Yeah.
say, you know what, I work Monday to Friday, 9 till 6. I don't want to receive work calls outside of that. So if somebody's going to call me at 7 p.m., for example, on a Thursday night, if I had that classic mobile phone, work issued mobile phone, that phone would be ringing and I'd feel guilt to answer it. With Aircall, I have that work-life balance back, and I can action that phone call the next day. So that's really what's in it for, I guess, the agents or the users.
Correct. On the recent podcast, we also had some experts on talking about the Philippines and offshoring solutions for NDIS providers. And what we're about to do in my own business is we're about to have, we're calling it the AM and PM shift. So we're going to have someone in Manila doing 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. in the afternoon, right, on the ops line. That'll be the AM shift. And then as we continue to get bigger, we'll also put someone on the PM shift that goes from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And again, it's brilliant because it's the same number. And it means that no matter what, you're guaranteeing service towards your customers because it's both. It's kind of lifestyle balance if it's just one person on the phone, and or it's continuity of service when you're doing around the clock services.
100%. That's why with Aircall, you decide, yeah, maybe the phone line will be open for, 16 hours of the day. But
Yep.
as a user, I'm only going to be available for 8 of those hours. So
Yep.
yeah, you can split it up accordingly, like in that particular example.
Yeah, and you mentioned recordings before. Like, I can't emphasize enough the value of that. So we look in the NDIS; it's a compliance-based industry. Unfortunately, you can have situations where there's neglect and abuse, and I'm talking about participants or people doing dodgy stuff. And if you've got basically evidence of that, and it could be someone calling a complaint, and there could be something bad, like they're in distress, and they explain to you their concern about what's going on. Well, that's the kind of stuff where you've got to be really like accurate about having a record of that. And so you can then follow up on that to protect the interests of the client. And then equally on the HR side of things, you can have situations where a member of staff might be inappropriate. It can happen. And so again, that's sort of it's evidence. And then also on the less serious side of things, you've got like the run of the mill day to day stuff where maybe you could have a 50-minute conversation as a debrief with someone and you can't remember everything that was said. So to be able to go back to the recording and the transcript, which happens automatically, all of those scenarios, it's golden because it's then evidence, it's reference points, etc.
Yeah, 100%. I can't recommend call recording enough. Obviously, you
Yeah.
can still use VoIP and its benefits without call recording, but I think when you actually do record the calls, that's when you really start seeing your money's worth, I guess, on the
Yes.
investment. I think you sort of touched on two sides of that there. First side is on that security side. So obviously, yeah, I think especially in the NDIS space, you want to make sure those calls are getting recorded so that yeah, I guess you can make sure that everything's safe and compliant and the right things are being said. So you can even track things like keywords, stuff like that, to make sure that your team are saying the right things, or if they're hearing things that they shouldn't be hearing on the calls that they're receiving, you can also track that as well. The
Mm.
second portion of that as well, after you started recording the calls, is you can start doing things like AI summaries, little like, if it was a 50-minute call, what was it about? What were the key parts of the call? Are there any action items and stuff like that? And that's when you can really start taking advantage and making the technology work for you.
Wow. I mean, yeah, we haven't started using the AI thing yet, but I know we will. I think as we scale and the volume of things, that's great for summaries. Can you unpack the keyword thing a bit more? So, like, tell the audience what that. You and I have talked about that in the past. Again, I haven't used that yet as a function, but I'm kind of intrigued. Can you sort of program words to look for? What's the go?
Yeah, 100%. That's basically how it works. You will punch in what we call it trackers, I believe, in Aircall. Yeah, you'll
Yep.
decide certain keywords you want the call recording to be listening out for, and then if those words are getting said, it can then alert the relevant supervisors or whoever in the business that those keywords are popping up.
Okay. So like if you didn't want people to swear, for example, could you put in the swear word and it would, say, oh, well, basically someone swearing and being inappropriate or something?
Correct. Yeah, it could alert you of that. So that's basically the premise. I think we discussed that about a client of yours actually. It was,
We did, didn't we? Yes. Yes.
I think it was. Yeah, it was there. It was. We were afraid that somebody was going to swear internally, and they wanted to be able to track that. So yeah, it's a very specific use case, but yes, theoretically you can do it.
Yeah, okay. It is fascinating. There's so many things I could ask you about. So in terms of the actual coordination of services. So what happens if you've got lots of people manning a line and you've got lots of users? Can you sort of, what can you do to forward things, pass on calls, assign stuff? How does that all work? Because you're all kind of on the same number, so you've got to have a way of allocating things, I suppose.
Yeah, correct. Well, I mean, if you're all sharing the same phone number, one thing I do want to point out as well that you can do as a benefit of VoIP technology is you can actually simultaneously make phone calls out from the same phone number and receive inbound calls to the same phone number as well. So that's really cool. I think the next iteration of what you're talking about though is how do you manage everything accordingly and how do you make sure that everyone's available and then once you're on phone calls, how can you I guess give your clients a smooth experience. I think I break that down into two parts. The first part would be what managing what we would call the call distribution, or I guess the smart flow is what we call it at Aircall. Basically, what we allow you to do is set up your entire call flow so that you can make sure that your clients are basically getting their phone calls answered in a fast and timely manner, and your team members are getting those phone calls round robin and can get access to the phone quickly.
Hmm.
The next part is, let's say that I've answered the phone call and I'm taking the phone call and I need to action what's being said. I, as the agent, then have an ability to type in my notes on the phone call. I can say what's happening on the call. I can assign a tag. But the next part, which you mentioned before, was if that phone call does need to go anywhere else,
Hmm.
Aircall does have every sort of classic conferencing feature you can imagine. So you can add people to the call. If I want to call somebody else and I want to add you on, I can. And if I want to call with somebody and I'm like, you know what, this actually is more suitable for Chris's department, I can then forward you the call accordingly. So that's all doable within Echo.
And one thing I like is you can do the straight on forward, or you can do I think a warm transfer or something where you can say, "Hey Pat, it's I've got Bob on the line with you. Is it okay if I transfer him now?" So you're not just dumping it on your teammate.
Yeah,
Um,
correct. It's yeah, we call it warm transfer or cold transfer.
yes.
The cold transfer is always funnier because you can just give no context at all and just send it straight to them and wish them best of luck. But actually with Aircall, if you type in the notes and then send them through the call, they'll actually see the notes as well. So
Oh,
that's
that's cool. Yeah, and also, you typically have the contact's name in there, so they'll recognize the call. So it's really not that bad for
yeah,
people that you know.
correct.
Interesting. Um, you mentioned notes there, and what you can do. Suppose it. I'm also a big fan of HubSpot from a sales and marketing point of view,
Mhm.
and I think like the very game changer that initially led to you and I meeting a couple of years ago now was that I was like, "What? You can integrate it with HubSpot?" And yeah, absolutely. And you can literally see the whole history. Like I sent a text to you, Pat, on this day, and the text said this. So that's that's just again game changing. Um, could you give us a little bit of a macro view on HubSpot's one of them from a CRM point of view, but you've got a whole marketplace, don't you, in terms of the systems that you actually connect with?
Yeah, bang on. So, I guess I mean, the way that I talk about Aircall typically to clients and to partners is, um, there's a number of VoIP technologies in the world. There's a lot of VoIP players. We didn't invent the space, but what Aircall does better than any other player confidently is what we refer to as our integration. So,
Mm,
for us, whether it's HubSpot, or other CRMs like Salesforce or what have you, or maybe you're using something like a help desk tool, something like a
mm,
Zendesk or an Intercom or something like that, or even if you have some other business specific applications, maybe you're in the recruiting space or you're in some other sector,
mm,
um, there's a good chance Aircall can or already does integrate with your I guess your day-to-day platform of choice.
mhm,
And the reason behind that is from Aircall's point of view and the way that we see phones and technology, we think that for us, the CRM is where most people will be living in doing their day-to-day work. So we think
Yep.
that all of your phone calls should come from your CRM and it should be pushing data back into that CRM as well. I'm
Mm.
using the word CRM quite broadly there, by the way, just in any platform that you view as where you perform your day-to-day tasks.
Well, correct, yeah, because yeah, when I think CRM, I might think and say HubSpot. I use it as my sales and marketing machine, but I also use Izango as a rostering system, which we love.
Yeah.
I can imagine a future where I'll probably be working with Izango to look at an API with you guys. So, like, you've got your integrations that are existing. Do you? Oh, this is going really geeky now. There's things called open APIs, and what that means is that you can basically plug it in. Can you plug in if you give a spec to a developer? Can you say, hey, I want to integrate with this open API with Aircall?
100%. The biggest thing that
Right.
needs to happen there to get a bit not too techy for the audience, but as long as the other platform also has that open API, you can make that work. And we're seeing a lot of that as well, depending on what space that you work in. As an example, this is a bit away from NDIS, but I've got partners who, we're doing a lot of HubSpot and Aircall work, and that's very
Yeah.
straightforward and easy selling. But they've got some clients who don't actually need or use HubSpot at all. They actually, they could be in a different sector altogether,
Yeah.
but they still want to grab the call data and push into those platforms. So I've got partners and developers that actually are building integrations into those platforms
Yeah.
if you don't need, a behemoth CRM system like HubSpot.
Well, correct. Yeah, because I mean, we were, as our business grows, we were looking at, okay, right, we got HubSpot for sales and marketing. It's Anger's our CRM, that's perfect. Our CMS, what a client management system. And then we think, all right, we might need another system for recruitment. So we were kind of looking at it and going like, well, what's the best recruitment software out there? And I smiled because I looked at that recruitment software's integrations and there was Aircall. So again, I guess the point is that it doesn't matter how many systems you use as a business, as much as you can you're always going to have ideally a one common phone call system. So you may as well just jack it in to all of the relevant systems. That's the kind of IT approach I'd take to that.
100%. Yeah. And I think especially if your business is somewhat sales or support focused, which is
Yep.
what a lot of businesses are. You're either a heavy sales arm or a heavy support arm. They're probably the bulk of your business. And then you can just decide, cool, do we want all those people to be on the same phone system? That would make sense. And they can all have their own relevant systems that you can push Aircall to. And if you want to add the extra people in your business as well, like, I don't know, the accounting team, stuff like that onto Aircall, you can. Or if you don't want to, you don't have to. So it's sort of, it's built to work with you,
Yeah,
I guess.
modular. Yeah, modular and pluggable in and all that stuff, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Um, I suppose one of the foundational points is that any VoIP system relies on a strong internet connection, right? So traditionally, when you're moving away from having your classic Telstra or Vodafone handset, what you're basically doing is that your handset is connecting with the tower, right, over there, or the mast, or the whatever. And yeah, sure, things are getting better with 5G, but and I get it, things are getting better and better. But generally speaking, that's how that works, and it's very rare that you can't get a full on phone signal unless you go into like a music festival or something, right? Um, Now you can use a VoIP system on of course, your internet at home or at the office. You can use it on your mobile device with your 3G, 4G, 5G connection, but it relies on that device connecting well with the tower because it's just data, right? So that's kind of like the fulcrum of things. But do
Mm.
you see any kind of future where there might be some opportunity to combine what I'd call like the telephonic reliability of 4G and 5G in terms of phone towers and stuff like that with systems like Aircall?
Yes, yeah, we do. And I'm trying to work out if I communicated this to you recently or not, because it was a release we had late last year. So what you can do now with Aircall is we've released a feature that allows you to transfer your calls to your cellular network if you're on the mobile application. So historically, like you got the nail on the head, it works off if the phone app, it's working off if you're connected to Wi-Fi, it'll work off the Wi-Fi. If you're in a good 4G or 5G spot, happy days, it'll just use the internet. What you can do now though with Aircall is once you're on a phone call, if you sense that you're not getting a good, I guess, phone connection reception, you can transfer it to the cellular network on your phone,
Oh,
which is it basically give you exactly what you described there. That's going to get you a classic, like if I was just going to make a classic phone call,
Yep.
it's that same experience, but you're using AirCall's technology to do it. So, and you still get to record everything and push everything back to HubSpot or wherever else.
Yep.
So yes, that exists now. We've catered for that. It's actually a very, very, I was ecstatic about the release because in Australia, I don't know if some of the listeners know, but obviously there's inconsistent reception across the country and inconsistent access to
Yeah.
how strong it is. I mean, I live in suburban Sydney, but I live in Stanmore, and it's an absolute black spot for reception. It's sort of known for having that, right? So
Mm.
whether it's myself or any other industry where you might have people who are on the road or
Mm.
car driving around or whatever it may be, they now have the option to transfer those calls to that network.
That's amazing, and I genuinely didn't know that yet. So I'm thrilled about that answer because so like, is that a settings thing where can you, what can you do? Can you kind of say like, hey, every time it's on this thing, i.e., the phone, I always want you to do that, or is it whilst you're in the phone call that you do that?
It's whilst you're in the phone call for now.
Okay.
But it was the first iteration of it was, if I'm on a phone call, and I'm using 4G or whatever, let's say I'm in my area of Stanmore and I can sense the phone call receptions, the connection's bad. Aircall will tell me the connection is bad, by the way. It will say
Yes.
your connection's bad, in which case you just press a button and you transfer it over to the cellular network, and there's no loss for the person you're on the phone with. It's just I'd refer to it as a transfer.
That's cool. Do you have any intentions to do it as like an ongoing setting of the device so that when it's always on the phone, it does that out of interest?
I'm sure they will get there at some point.
Yeah, no, I'm intrigued.
Our
Yeah, I'm
Our
going.
mobile
Yeah.
our mobile app has gotten a quite a good overhaul the last 12 months or so, which I'm very pleased about. We've got a good product team working on that now because that use case just kept popping up over and over.
Mm.
So
Well, and again for transparency, because like I work yes as a CEO, but then I'm doing sales as well, and sometimes in the NDIS that means I'm going out to a meet and greet or I'm going to check out my support worker team at a house or whatever. And sometimes in those spots, whilst you're on the move, there might be a little bit of tiny bit of a risk of a dropout. So I'm thrilled to hear about that development. That's a game changer. Um,
yep, I do that as well.
Glad I asked that one. Okay. Um, what kind of resistance do you see from NDIS providers going like, oh, I'm not sure about this VoIP stuff? Like what are kind of the objections and the things that people have to the hurdles to get over, and what advice would you give to them?
I think the biggest thing I've seen from NDIS providers, either ones we've worked in via yourself or with other ones we've come in organically. The biggest change management piece I've seen is those providers using those legacy desk phones and
Yep.
having, viewing phones a certain way, which is, it's just a tool that your business has to do to make phone calls. And there might be more of a self highlights in here. Um, I think once you can get over the hurdle of, we don't just want to use, we don't need to use the desk phone anymore. We can, like you said before, we can speak into the computer or we can use a headset.
Yep.
Once you start understanding that, you can turn your phone into not just I guess, a tool to facilitate phone calls and instead more of a productivity tool.
Mm.
That's when you'll really see the upside. But for me, the biggest hurdle I've seen is convincing providers that the desk phone is a pretty inefficient way to work and it's not doing you many favors.
Yep.
And there's so much more out there that can be used just by, changing your phone system. So
Absolutely. And I used to have one of those desktop phones that was connected to another VoIP system before I went to Aircall. And, the number of times I've nearly killed myself running down the stairs to try and get back to my desk because it was a thing tied to my desk, it's so much easier just to know it goes ring, ring on the computer and ring, ring on this at the same time. It makes sense because you've always got your phone on you pretty much. Um,
100%.
yeah, and I think also to be candid, like I think the connectivity thing was previously a barrier, in terms of like, oh, but it doesn't work as well if I'm driving on the highway or whatever. But that's brilliant to know about this new development. That's, I think, literally a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think the desk phone piece is what I would say, but also, yeah, it's if you are really, really used to using a classic PBX on-premise desk phone system or a mobile phone, and maybe you've had an experience with VoIP earlier. VoIP's been around for a few years now, but if you've had that experience where it's relying on the internet, maybe it's not as immediately smooth as you thought it might be. It can turn people off, but I would encourage people to try it. It's the connection's pretty seamless these days, at least from an air call side of things. So
It is. It is. No, I find it a very positive experience. In terms of the AI side, actually, remember before I go down to AI, like from a let's say you got a team, and I don't know, it could be an operations manager as a provider. You got maybe a new salesperson or an intake coordinator that's bringing in inquiries. Sometimes you want to maybe yes listen back to a recording, but sometimes if you're getting really sophisticated, it would be great if you could literally whisper some advice into the person's ear. Now, I know that this function exists, but could you just tell us a little bit about the whisper?
yeah, yes, the call whisper. It's always a not controversial feature to discuss, but it's people have different opinions on it. Basically with air call, again, this is part of the benefit of something you get if you are recording your phone calls. Basically, let's say that you're on a phone call and you're chatting to somebody. I, as an admin of Aircall, I can optionally hop in and I can listen to your phone call. So I can listen to your call as you're on it. I can make sure you're saying the right things, and I'm happy with that. If for some reason I need to hop into the call or I need to say something to yourself, we have that call whispering function where I can actually say, Chris, actually, you've said the wrong thing there. Say this, or make sure to ask this question. So yes, you can do that with Aircall.
I think there's a time and a place for it, especially for the newbies. You wouldn't declare to the customer that you got that going on, and you try not to be down the neck too much. It's to be constructive.
Like, I was in an outbound sales job before I was at Aircall, and we didn't have Aircall, luckily. But I just thought, when I was doing that job, if I had somebody whispering in my ear while I was on those phone calls, I wouldn't have liked it very much. So I think from now, it's great being in partnerships at Aircall now because no one ever checks my phone calls. But
Yeah.
I think it would be yeah, I think you're right. A time and place would be the right way to just to describe that.
Okay, so you're already doing some cool things with AI and with call summaries, etc.
Mhm.
I suppose like if you go, let's just like take a step back from phone systems for a second. Artificial intelligence fundamentally kind of went into its first iteration of existence around 2 years ago now, when everyone got the chat GPT, got famous, and they starting to understand what a large language model is, an LLM, right? And that was evolutionary phase number one. And that's still groundbreaking. And it's, oh my God, changed your life forever. And I truly believe that NDIS providers that embrace things like that will continue to be competitive. And those that don't embrace it, they're going to get left behind because it's just too much of a productivity enhancement, right? So that's kind of like evolution number one. But evolution number two is kind of going into the realm of what are called AI agents, right? And AI agents is the idea that you can literally have a computer or an AI doing tasks for you, whether it be literally finding a car, finding a holiday, clicking around on your laptop. There are indeed phone systems that do outbound scripted phone calls and to an extent do whatever. Do you have a point of view of that? Do you see that as whether it be air call or not, like just VoIP systems? Do you see them integrating with AI tool sets so that you can, to some extent, or not automate, but like insert AI agents into VoIP? What do you reckon to that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm still getting my head around some of that stuff. I mean, obviously, I've come from a place where I've been selling phones for 3 years, and we pitched the whole human connection. Voice is the best thing in the world. Why would you want to talk to anybody other than a human? But the reality is, the market has dictated to us that
Mm,
AI agents are a thing, and that they're here to stay. So
mm,
I think from the outbound piece, I'll say I'm not too sure. I'm still making my mind up on how I would feel about being approached by an outbound agent or an outbound SDR, whatever it is, to try to sell me something or to book me in for something that I'm still making my mind up on. However, I think the inbound piece makes a lot more sense for immediate applications for the AI agent. I've seen this a little bit over the last couple of years. So the first AI agent I witnessed at Aircall was with a provider or a partner of ours called ADA. And the basic concept of it was that ADA will answer the call first with an AI agent,
mhm,
and it will decipher for the call, and it will try to take care of the client's request or whatever it is. And if it's a basic request, I don't know, like billing information or I don't know, account details, something like that, Ada will then try to answer the call. It'll read your database and try to answer the call and give it back.
mm,
However, if for some reason Ada can't solve the call, then what it will do, it'll forward the call through to the agent using air call, and it will give the human the notes the AI has just taken on the call. So I think that's a really, really good
Mm.
application. That's the first one I saw. The second application I'm seeing now is what Aircall is going to be releasing at the end of the month. So we have our own AI agent scheduled to come out. I think it's supposed to be end of this month. It might be
Do
start of next
you?
month.
Oh, stop
Yeah,
it. You're just
yeah.
teasing me now. This is great. Okay. Go on.
You've timed it well. And what our, because I think I'm hearing a lot about AI, especially in the last couple of weeks specifically. Everyone's like, okay, everyone has AI features, but so what? It's kind of like, what, give me an
Yeah.
actual use case for how I would use this AI. And I think for a lot of businesses, it could be in the NDIS space, but other spaces as well. If you're brand new to AI, sure, the features will wow you at first, but you really need to learn for your business. How can you find simple applications of AI and make it work? So
Mm.
one application we have with our agent is, and the way that we're starting to pitch it internally and to speak about to partners and stuff like that is, let's say, you're an NDIS provider and let's say you're open from 9 to 5.
Yep.
You've got agents that are working 9 to 5, and that's great.
Yep.
Now, in your case, you could hire if somebody is going to call you outside of those hours. Maybe you want to have an overseas assistant in the Philippines or something like that. What we are talking about as well as an alternative is maybe if they call outside of hours, you could have the AI, decipher the call. So
Nice.
you could have the AI very confidently tell the person, "Hi, I'm an AI agent. I work, I'm here for the out of hours calls, but let me see if I can help you out." It can pull answers from the knowledge base and help them out if they need to, or if it does require human intervention at some point, then they can push the call forward to the person the next day or wherever it needs to go. But just helping to reduce that missed call percentage, that was the biggest thing we saw at Aircall. We've got 20,000 customers, so many missed calls, and the
Yep.
biggest pain point was just like, how can we, even if we could just decipher all those missed calls and just see, obviously some of them could be just not good calls you don't need anyways, but the ones that are actually valuable, that could be leads or people who need help, that's extremely valuable to have an AI answer that and try to help that person rather than giving them no help at all and getting a voicemail message.
Nice. Very insightful. Okay. And just to add to that, the whole the so what thing's really important. And I
Mm.
also think the which industry question is very relevant. So taking which industry and also splitting inbound versus outbound, I think from an outbound business development point of view, the NDIS possibly wouldn't be appropriate for most cases because it's a relationships industry. Like you actually have to trust Chris or trust Pat because they gave a darn enough to really get to know you and reach out and connect on various stories and shared lived experience about disabilities and the people in your life. Like it's human, quite rightly. It's a human based relationships industry. So I think that that's relevant. I suppose hypothetically, if you were doing non-business development stuff, let's say you had, this is me thinking out loud now. Let's say you're a massive NDIS provider and you've got a database of 20,000 people that you want to invite to a special conference or an event that you're running, and it's much more transactional. That maybe, maybe it could be for all the parents that you want to get in touch with. Hey, and declaring it, letting I'm an AI agent calling from blah. We would love to invite you to this special event. Can I, interest you in sending you a link? Something. That could work well from an outbound point of view. Inbound, though, I agree with your distinction. I think that if you're reducing the call rates and finding a way to treat, I'd call it triage. So it's just like if you're going to the emergency department at the hospital, the triage nurse sees you first before you go to the doctor or get sent back to the waiting room.
Yep, correct. I think for people that are calling in, no matter what industry it is, as long as you're getting heard by somebody, I know it's still an AI, but like
Yeah.
as long as you're being heard, you've made progress forward with your inquiry, whatever it is, you've given
Yes.
it information, it's absorbed it, it's going to pass it on or whatever. That's
Mm.
still an upgrade on what it is today if you get a missed call.
It is. And do you know what? The NDIS, when you become a registered provider, you go on what's called the provider finder, which is a national database. And there's like a website that you can go to. You can tell the NDIS Commission to hide your contact details, but this is a bugbear of all the business owners. So, like, true
Mhm.
story, we got registered back in October. And as a result, what you do is you often put down as the founder, I put down Chris Hall's personal mobile number as well as my work email address. So if you don't call the commission in a very special way and say, leave my business listing up, but take out my personal number, take out my email address, then you get from yours to the world. And so it's one of the most spammed lists in the whole industry. And everyone gets all of these bloody annoying completely non-targeted marketing campaigns. And so the reason I mentioned that part is that even for the founders out there that are registered providers, imagine if your ring standard office line or whatever, if that could be the number that you put down there, if that could just be dealt with because you don't want to deal with another SEO agency or a marketing agency, and maybe you just automatically tell the agent, "Thanks very much, we've got that sorted. Thanks, go away." To qualify,
Yeah,
that would be a wonderful time saver, wouldn't it?
bang on, 100%.
Yeah. I'm thinking about myself. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And also like Alex Hermosi, the marketing guy. He great, interesting character, very charismatic. And one of the things that he says is that it's something like you get a 90% increase on your conversion rate for sales when when you reply to an inquiry within 2 minutes or something like that,
Yep, that checks out.
right? So like imagine that. So if you're in a meeting, but then you got the boom, oh, thanks very much for inquiring. Again, declare it. I'm an automated assistant. I would love to kind of blah blah blah. We're going to put you in touch with Pat. We can book a meeting here. He's available now at 3 o'clock. Would you like me to book you in right now? Boom.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, and I've seen some shocking call distributions in my time at Aircall where people are still, we're trying to help people with their phone calls, but like you're still waiting minutes and minutes on end. So yeah, I agree. 2 minutes is what you want max to like get people answer the phone, even if it is AI. So
Mm-hmm.
a good point from Hermosi. I guess we could have worn singlets and done
But
our
yeah,
workout
the
before we
nose
hopped
thing.
on. But
He's a character and a half. Okay. So I suppose like one of the final questions I'd love to ask you is around um just trying to think like 1 minute, my question's gone now. I suppose what's next? What's next? Because okay, we talked about AI, we talked about agents. Like, where do you see things going over the next 5 years? What are some of the macro trends towards that you're going to see?
I think for Aircall specifically, what we're seeing is, especially in Australia, we're seeing a really demand where we're pushing beyond just being a VoIP platform to being more of a communications platform. And what that really basically means to us is meeting customers on different channels, whether that is your classic voice channel, whether it's, an SMS channel and you want to be able to text your clients, whether you're using something like WhatsApp. That's really the direction that it feels like we're being pushed towards by our clients. They're basically telling us we want it. We love phone calls, we love VoIP, but we want to have options of the ways we're going to communicate with our clients.
Nice.
The next thing would be, oh, and it's obviously we've spoken about it, is the AI piece. It just feels like learning how to properly harness AI and using all of your voice data, all of your really important minutes and voice data that you're collecting and all those action items and stuff. And how can you actually use those insights to help your business? That's probably what I think the next couple, at least for the next couple of years, is going to be dictating.
Yeah, agreed. And then even just on that multi-communication thing,
Mm.
I've done, as you know, I've done webinars even on SMSs, right? So like I recommend to providers to, if you want to ask him for a Google review, text your database, because SMSs have what was it, something silly like a 90% open rate, whereas an
Mhm.
email campaign might have 10 to 30% if you're lucky. So it's
Yeah.
got a crazy open rate. The response rate's really high. Within usually 60 seconds, you're responding to a text, all of that jazz. So that's highly relevant. And there's something to be said, like, again, in disability, just to add to that, in all seriousness, disability is all about person-centered choice, right? So you might have someone that's nonverbal, that can't speak, and they can type a text message though, or maybe they are confronted by speaking to people on the phone because they've got severe anxiety. There's reasons, very valid reasons, that you might not be able to speak to someone. So the whole SMS thing is integral to options for disability providers.
100%. I think, obviously, historically, I'd say if you're going to buy something like Aircall, if you were just going to buy it for messaging purposes alone, I wouldn't advise it. It's predominantly a calling platform, but we're moving in a direction where exactly that sort of use case. People in us, but also people in Australia like to text. But then also you're throwing use cases like yours, specifically in that NDIS space, where yeah, someone is nonverbal and they just want to text your business, and
Yep.
be able to speak to somebody,
Yep.
then 100% should be able to cater for that use case. So yeah, I think that's the way it's all going.
Totally. And I love, a few months back, maybe 6 months ago now, you guys released the multimedia picture messages too. And that was a big game changer for us because, again, not everyone's good at emails. Some NDIS participants don't have an email, but they're good on their phone, right? So their ability to text you a picture of what's the problem, what's going wrong, how can I help you? And then it comes up an air call, you can put it in your database.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of having a product that's constantly evolving. And I mean, VoIP is evolving as an industry, but even for air calls specifically, is the more things we can release, like MMS or AI or other messaging things, the more use cases we can find, and the more verticals people like you can apply these things to. So yeah, it's great to hear that like MMS, for example, is a big winner in the NDIS space.
One
100%.
final question for you, mate. From a
Yep.
manager's and business owner's point of view,
Mm.
when you've got, again, your classic physical handset, non-VoIP, one thing you don't have is any visibility about what the hell's being said, how many calls are being made, how many things are being answered. From a
Mhm.
manager owner point of view, what kind of dashboards and KPI metrics can you run in the back end of things to know all of those answers, call rates, answer rates, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I think the beautiful thing about something like Aircall is that we have all those dashboards pre-built out for you.
Yes.
So we still give, for business owners out there, if you do want to track your calls and you're not even sure what metrics to get started on,
Yep.
I would just start looking at the volume of calls, how many calls being made, total per business, per user, how long are those phone calls. And I think the biggest thing you can start looking at is that SLA like we spoke about. So
Yep.
making sure that they are answering within the SLA. And then after you've got an idea of, okay, are the calls being handled efficiently? The next question is going to be, okay, well, what's the outcome of these calls? And are the SLAs and the metrics and the reporting that we've set up with our VoIP tool, are they matching the call outcomes and the business outcomes that we want? So,
Mm.
100%. That's something that you should, if you're not already doing that, you should definitely be looking into that.
Correct. It comes down to the classic thing of if you can't manage it, you can't measure it. Sorry, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Um, yeah.
Right.
So visibility everywhere. And my analogy to marketing would be, I'm pretty cynical about print media in comparison to digital stuff nowadays because I can, run a Google Analytics or whatever else and see exactly how many clicks, who's going where. Like this is kind of the world we live in now. So you need to be able to, I think, digitize things a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and I think I mean, it's a known fact, but I think like your customer communications are so important. Not saying that a phone call is more important than an email or anything else, but like you need to be tracking every phone call, not just what happened on the call, but yeah, looking at the whole thing holistically. So very
Correct.
important for every industry, especially in the NDIS.
It really is. It really is. Well, listen, look, Pat, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. I can't recommend Aircall enough to NDIS providers, and there's various ways in which you can try it out. I will put a link in the show notes below where people can click on that. But are there any kind of like trials that people can do or anything like that to dip their toe in the water?
100%. Yeah. So you can literally go straight to our website. You can request a 7-day free trial. Either ask Chris to set you up or feel free to go directly to us.
Yep.
Do a 7-day free trial. We'll give you a quick call to verify that you're a real person and that you're not a spam account or an AI. But then after that, give it a go for 7 days. And then yeah, if you're interested to learn more, we can speak to you with one of our specialists and take you through the product in a bit of depth. So
Exactly. That's brilliant. Well, listen, Pat Donley from Aircall, thank you for coming on the podcast today. It's been a sincere pleasure to talk strategically and actually learn a lot about what some of the most recent updates are and what's coming ahead. So thank you so much for your time today.
thank you. Good to speak.
Yeah, good on you, mate. All right. My name's Chris Hall. Thank you very much. Share, like, all that kind of jazz. And I'll see you all again for a future episode soon. Cheers, Pat.
Ciao, ciao.